In this video we're going to talk about how to style components inside of Material UI. So maybe there is a component you want to build out yourself, something that doesn't really exist in the library itself. We're going to check out how to do that, how to apply styles to the components of Material UI. And then also we're going to check out how to actually customize existing components, what kind of selectors you have and what is available, what is possible even, with a couple of examples in this tutorial. So let's jump right into it. So let's start how to actually style something custom from the ground up with Material UI. So after that, we gonna check out how to customize it, existing components, but now it's really about how to style it from the beginning. So we have 4 different ways of actually how to achieve that. And let's talk about all of them here. We can see we have this rudimentary card here where we have direct styles applied, SX styles, we have a styled box, and then inline styles. So this is the SX style, which we just take in here in this box component. The box component comes from Material UI itself, and it's basically a div. So we have this SX prop. This is something new in the version 5, where we can use and apply pretty much, let's say, vanilla CSS with some perks. Then we have this styled box here, where we use this style component from, I think at the end of the day, it's style component library that Material UI uses under the hood, or it was before, now I think it's Emotion, but it uses this styled method, where we can have the first argument here, the box, and then we can style it here. Then we have also a direct version of how to apply styles. Not all of the Material UI components have that actually. I think typography and box are one of the only ones where you can apply directly styles here as properties. And then also we have the inline style, which uses this HTML property style, which is pretty much normal React, where we have this inline style object here, where we have the styles. So what are the differences and what would I recommend? So we talk about the differences right now, and at the end of I'm going to tell you what I prefer of these methods, how to style a component. So we have here the font size, for example. This works for all the same. Then also the background color also works for all the same. Same with width and height. Then we have the border, that's also the same. And then we come to the color, where we have 2 different differences. We have this primary main. So this actually takes the color from the theme. So if you remember in the last videos, we talked about the theme. So this takes the primary main color of the theme. But first, we have this breakpoint array. So if you don't know, this is from Style Components or Emotion. These are 2 libraries that use that, where we have these brackets, where the first breakpoint is this, and then the second breakpoint and above uses whatever style we put in here. Here we can actually just add a string with primary main, and it will work like that. With the styled box, it's a little bit differently, so we don't have the breakpoints with this array method, let's say. We have it where we have access to the theme here. We have access up here, where we can target the theme, palette, primary, and main, and that's how we get our main color. And then we have this theme breakpoints. So this is a little bit more like vanilla CSS, where we can target the theme breakpoint small and everything below small, which is then blue. So if we zoom out here a little bit, you can see now the color changed to our primary color, which is this red. So that's how it works. Then if you go to the inline style, so if you remember, that's the HTML property directly, the inline style here. This doesn't really work because primary main is nothing that we have accesses in this inline style. So that's one of the drawbacks of using that inline style here. Then let's go further to the padding. So we have the padding left here. This is where the text is aligned. So we can see it works all fine, except the inline styles. So here the 2 is actually not 2 pixels like it would be in inline styles. It's actually the second index of our in the theme defined spacing. So I think that's probably 24 pixels or something like that. It doesn't really matter for this example, but that's how we have access to that theme spacing breakpoint or theme spacing index. So how we access that here in the styled is a little bit differently. If we would just put 2, so let's do that for an example, or as an example. You can see now it's 2 pixels instead of the second index of our in the theme defined spacing. So if we revert that, we can see we access that with theme, which again comes out from up here, and then the spacing method where we put 2 as the index. So, and then if you go here and we check out our application, we can see we have a hover state here. Then again, in inline styles and direct, this doesn't work. So if you go here to direct, there is no property hover. So yeah, that's just one of the drawbacks of adding styles directly. Also, we don't have hover, of course, in the inline styles. Vanilla React does not have that. But in the styled box, we have access to that with this selector and :hover. And then we can add whatever styles we want here in a new object. Pretty similar to, or exactly the same as in the S6 styles. Then we have even this transition. So if you hover, we can see we have this little transition. And that we will add that like this. It's a little bit specific to how we add it. It's a transition, and then we have we convert that into a method, so a function, an arrow function where we have theme transition. So the theme we will have access here if we add this arrow function, and we create this transition for this property here. We can even add different properties here where we would have that transition. But that's how it works. That's just the syntax of Material UI, and it's the exact same thing below here. So we can see with some of these methods or options available to us how to customize things in Material UI. Some of them have real drawbacks like this direct and inline styles. So what would I suggest? So my suggestion is not really to use inline styles other than if you have like a very specific JavaScript logic that adds something with the a style, something here in the style property, in the direct HTML style property. And I will also not suggest to use these directly applied props to the box component. It's just, yeah, not really separation of concerns, and also it makes the component way bigger, and it also has some drawbacks like with the hover or transition or stuff like that. So I would really opt into this SX style or to the styled box. It really doesn't matter too much. The biggest difference is how you actually use the breakpoints. So I prefer this way of applying the breakpoints. If you prefer a little bit more of the traditional CSS way, you might prefer that option. But at the end of the day, it's really up to you what you want to use. A little bit careful though, you have to be with the specificity. So we have here a styled box that we use with the styled method. Then we apply an SX style to it and also a inline HTML element inline styles. And then also here styles directly applied to the component. So I'm giving you a couple of seconds to figure out or to guess what would be the background color of this element. Would it be blue, green, red, or orange? So did you make your guess? Let's check it out. So it would of course be blue because the inline style has the biggest specificity of them all. So if we go and delete that, then it will be red. So the SX is above, for example, the styled box styles that we have here. If we get rid of that, it is actually green. So the background color here. So this has a higher specificity as the background color orange here. And if you take that away, then it will be orange. And if you take that away, then of course there is no background color anymore defined. So yeah, you have to be a little bit careful with the specificity, especially if you use these styled elements in combination with the SX prop, for example. So by the way, I'm a little bit fast on purpose. So if this was a little bit fast for you to actually understand exactly how everything works, the description or the repo is linked in the description down below. You can fork the project and play around with it yourself. I think that's the best way to learn. Here, I just want to give you a quick summary what exactly is possible with the stylings. And yeah, this is pretty much for you to now play around with. Again, the description or the repo is linked in the description down below. So let's go into how to actually customize an existing component. So we have here a component, let me make that a little bit bigger, which is actually a base component of Material UI itself, which is this input base, which is pretty much an input field. And we have these two versions, how we styled them. So if you go down here, we have the styled input, which is this one, and we have this SX style, which is this one. Just quickly, that's the input base with the SX style, styled input. So just a quick interruption, I just want to mention that I started to offer consultant services. So if you're in the React space, so let's say React, the Next.js, Material UI, and you need some help with your project, you can contact me and I can help you out in a consultation session, especially for small teams. I have quite a big discount. So the details for that are in the description down below. So yeah, let's continue with the tutorial. So how do we actually style existing components in Material UI? Because that's one of the most daunting things that we do in Material UI, which sometimes can be quite frustrating because it's not so straightforward. It was even worse in the past, version 4 and below, but now version 5, it made it a little bit better. But let's check out how it actually works. So we have this color blue here, that works the same. So we can see if we write here or even the placeholder is blue. Then we have access to this label. So that's one thing, how you can target a specific element. So if we go here and we inspect the component, we can see, so this is the grid itself, that has nothing to do with the component itself, and that's the first element of the input base component. And then we can see it also has a child, which is this input element. So we can target that in different ways. This component now does not have a label, but that would be one way how to target the label. Just to keep it in here so you have it as an example. But if you would now want to target that the input itself and not the wrapping element, we would do it the following way. We would add this ampersand, then space, very important here, then the class selector, which of course is just a dot, and then the MUI input base input. So where does this come from? So again, if you check it out here, we can see that this wrapping element has a class Material UI input base root, and then this input has a class MUI input base input. So that's how we actually target this this element. So if you would want to change something that is set here, we would do it with this selector. Keep in mind though that if you remove the space here, for example, you can see the styles are not applied. So that's some of the drawbacks that you have working with Material UI. Sometimes it's not so self-explanatory how you actually have to exactly use these selectors. Yeah, sometimes you really just have to play around with adding a space, adding no space. Yes, that's the only real thing I can give you there as a tip. Then again, we have different ways of how we add styles here. So here, the palette background paper, we just say background paper as a string here, but at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same. And of course, the selector is also the same as down below here in the SX style. Then the transition also works pretty similarly. We have already seen that before. That transition, you can see the fading of this box shadow that we use also with this focus. So you can add actually the focus state As you can see here, again, make sure to not have any spaces around here with the focus state. Also, we can also add a hover state here as that. So if you now hover over it, we can also see it's not just like this border box, or it does not just appear on focus, but also on hover. Then sometimes we have styles that are applied if we have props set here. For example, this disabled. So if you go to true here and add the disabled style to it, so you can see it's not clickable anymore. It's also the opacity has been gone. We can target that styles to only this state. We can add this MUI disabled, for example. There are other properties as well. So where do they come from? So if you go here and inspect again, we can see now that we have in our wrapping component an additional MUI disabled class. So that's how we target styles that we only want to apply in this specific state. Again, if I add, for example, space here, the style is not applied. So be careful with how you apply styles so that, again, sometimes you just play around and then you figure it out when it actually is applied. Can be frustrating sometimes, but that's just how Material UI works. Then the last thing I want to show you is that we have this double ampersand sometimes as well. Again, you can check out this description and read about it here in the repo, which again is linked in the description down below. This is from a discussion in Stack Overflow, where we can see that we have this double ampersand that has sometimes higher specificity as if just using the ampersand. So also sometimes if the style won't be applied and you can't figure out why, try this double ampersand. The reason of it is sometimes we have different states in our components that override the style that we have here. So instead of writing something like that, important, instead of writing that as we would in normal CSS, this is really something you shouldn't use with Material UI. Rather try the double ampersand, and most of the time it will actually work. This just a little heads up there. So that was already it for this video. Again, if it was a little bit fast, I really encourage you to fork the repo and play around with the example yourself. Sometimes, as I said, it can be a little bit daunting and frustrating if you want to customize existing components, especially if they're more complex as just this one that has a div and an input HTML. If you want to customize, for example, a card that has many different childrens, it's sometimes a little bit hard to do. Generally with Material UI, it is an opinionated component library. So the more you want to customize it, the more you're actually going to fight the tool. So you rather really think if you want to customize it or just keep the usually anyway good UX UI from Material UI and use it as an opinionated tool instead of highly customizing it. So this was already it. If you liked the video, if it did help you, please leave it a like. If you want to see more videos like that, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.